How deception beats honesty every time. Machiavelli's truth. Let me ask you something that most people are too afraid to say out loud. What if honesty isn't the virtue we've been told it is? What if the world doesn't actually reward truth, but punishes it? What if, in the real world, the one we all live in, deception isn't just common, it's necessary? And that might sound like moral heresy, but it's exactly the kind of uncomfortable truth Niccolo Machiavelli dared to expose. And today, we're going to walk through that fire. You and I have been taught since childhood that honesty is noble, pure and righteous. Parents, teachers, religions, and governments all reinforce this ideal. Tell the truth, and the truth will set you free. But then we grow up, and we notice something strange. The people who rise to the top often aren't the most honest, they're the most strategic. The ones who win the game aren't the ones who play by the rules, but the ones who understand how the rules can be bent. And suddenly we're faced with a philosophical dilemma. Do we cling to honesty, knowing it may cost us influence, power, or even survival? Or do we embrace the darker truth that deception, used wisely, can be a tool of extraordinary effectiveness?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Machiavelli saw this with brutal clarity. He didn't write The Prince as a guide to evil. He wrote it as a mirror held up to the nature of power. He wasn't saying, be cruel. He was saying, understand cruelty because others will use it against you. In a world where appearances matter more than intentions, where perception is often more powerful than reality, Machiavelli argued that the wise ruler must learn how not to be good. Not because goodness has no value, but because it has no guarantee. The world, he insisted, is not governed by virtue, it's governed by outcomes. So let's dig deeper. Why does deception work? Why does it beat honesty in so many real-world scenarios? First, because human beings are wired to respond to certainty, not truth. Truth is often complex, uncertain, and uncomfortable. It requires nuance. It demands patience. But deception offers simplicity. It delivers what we want to hear. It confirms our biases. And in a world starved for clarity, deception feels like a gift. That's why politicians use it. That's why marketers use it. That's why we sometimes use it on others and even on ourselves. Now ask yourself this: when was the last time you told the truth even though it cost you something? And how did it feel? Did it bring clarity or chaos? Did it build trust or did it make people uncomfortable? Truth has power, yes, but it also has a price. And most people, when faced with that cost, choose comfort instead. That's why deception thrives. Because it's easy. Because it's effective. Because it works. But Machiavelli wasn't saying, lie for the sake of lying. He was saying, understand the terrain. The prince, or in modern terms, anyone who leads must know when to play the lion and when to play the fox. The lion intimidates with strength. The fox survives through cunning. If you are only one or the other, you will fall. But if you can shift between them, if you can master both fairness and manipulation, then you are playing the real game. The game most people don't even know they're in. And here's the kicker: even honesty, when weaponized, becomes a form of deception. Think about that. Brutal honesty can be used to control, to intimidate, to win moral high ground. It can be a mask worn by those who want to appear virtuous while actually manipulating perception. So the question isn't, should I be honest or deceptive? The question is, what is my intention? What is the outcome I'm shaping? And am I aware of the tools I'm using? This isn't a license to be cruel. It's a call to be conscious, to recognize that honesty and deception are not opposites, they're tools. And the danger lies not in using them, but in using them unconsciously. The person who lies to win, knowing it's a tactic, is far less dangerous than the person who lies to themselves and still believes they're being honest. That's the real deception. That's the one that ruins nations, relationships, and lives. And so, let me leave you with this question. Do you truly value truth, or do you value the feeling of being right? Because the two are not the same. And if you can't tell the difference, someone more Machiavellian will make the decision for you. The illusion of virtue, how morality becomes a mask for power. Let's go further down the rabbit hole. Because now that we've seen how deception can be more effective than honesty, we need to ask ourselves a much deeper question. What about morality itself? What if virtue, the very thing we're told separates the good from the bad, isn't as pure as it seems? What if morality has been hijacked, not to uplift society, but to control it? What if, as Machiavelli suggested, virtue is often just a performance, a costume worn by those who understand how power really works? See, here's the uncomfortable truth. People don't follow virtue because they've reasoned it to be right. They follow it because it looks right. And when something looks right, it becomes a social weapon. If you appear moral, people trust you. They give you the benefit of the doubt. They elevate you. Many of the most powerful people throughout history didn't gain their influence through raw force. They gained it by appearing to be virtuous while doing whatever was necessary, but behind closed doors. That's not cynicism. That's observation. Machiavelli, in his time, was surrounded by corrupt rulers, warring states, and religious authorities who preached humility but practiced domination. He saw firsthand how the ones who spoke most of virtue were often the ones who betrayed it most violently in private. And rather than pretending otherwise, he said it outright: if you want to win in this world, you must understand the appearance of morality is often more important than morality itself. That's why he said a prince must appear to be merciful, faithful, humane, religious, upright, but must also be prepared to act against those virtues when necessary. That quote alone has shaken centuries of philosophers and politicians. Now, let's bring this into our world. Look around today: social media, politics, corporate branding. Everyone is performing virtue. In a world where perception is currency, moral alignment has become a brand strategy. Companies slap slogans on their walls about equality and justice while outsourcing labor to factories that exploit workers. Influencers preach mental health while silently spiraling into breakdowns off camera. And politicians talk about compassion while funding systems that perpetuate suffering. And we, the public, often reward the performance rather than the substance. We click, like, and share virtue not because we verify it, but because it feels good to be associated with it. But here's the unsettling question: is that morality? Or is it just another form of deception? And if it is deception, then what becomes of virtue? Can it survive as a force for good? or has it already been co-opted into a smokescreen for power? Machiavelli doesn't leave us without hope. He doesn't say virtue is useless, he says it's dangerous when misunderstood. If you believe that simply being good is enough to protect you, you're walking into battle with your eyes closed. The world isn't built on fairness. It's built on interest, leverage, and perception. That's why cunning often wins over sincerity. That's why people will praise your honesty until it threatens their comfort. That's why the one who understands the game and plays it well often beats the one who refuses to play at all. So what do we do with that knowledge? Do we throw morality away? No, we refine it. We stop treating virtue like a costume and start treating it like a discipline. We stop assuming that goodness means weakness, and we start realizing that true morality requires the strength to act with integrity, even when it costs you. But to do that, you must first understand the battlefield. You must see how easily morality becomes a weapon in the hands of those who seek control. And then you must ask yourself, is the virtue I live by something I chose or something I was told to perform? Because here's the paradox. The more honest you are about your own capacity for deception, the less likely it is to control you. The more clearly you see the illusion of virtue in others, the more consciously you can create real virtue within yourself. But you can't do that if you're still clinging to the fantasy that morality always wins. It doesn't, not in the short term. Machiavelli was clear about that. But he also hinted at something deeper. The person who understands both virtue and deception, the one who can walk in both worlds without being consumed, that person is rare, and powerful, and dangerous. So let me ask you, are you living by values or are you performing them? And if the world stripped away your rewards for being good, would you still choose virtue? The fox and the lion, why being feared is safer than being loved. Here's a question most people never dare to ask themselves. Would you rather be feared or loved? Your instinct might respond, quickly loved, of course. But pause. Strip away the fantasy. Strip away the comforting illusions we've built around human relationships, leadership, and influence. And ask again when it really matters, when your survival, your authority, your impact is at stake, what protects you more, love or fear? Machiavelli answered that question with clinical precision. He said, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose. Not because love is weak, not because it's unimportant, but because love is fragile. It is conditional, temporary, and often dependent on continued satisfaction. People love you when you serve them, when you please them, when you fulfill their expectations. But the moment you fail, when you disappoint, when you falter, when you stop giving, love evaporates. It turns cold, it turns bitter, and worst of all, it turns into resentment. Fear, on the other hand, is durable. It doesn't require constant maintenance. Once established, it creates boundaries. It commands respect. It protects you from betrayal in a way love cannot. Because while someone who loves you might betray you if their emotions shift, someone who fears you will think twice even if they hate you. That's the brutal logic Machiavelli laid bare. And while modern minds recoil from it, secretly we know it's true. We've seen it in governments, in business, in families, even in friendships. Love is beautiful, yes, but fear is reliable. Now, don't misunderstand this. Machiavelli wasn't advocating cruelty for cruelty's sake. He wasn't saying, be a tyrant. He was saying, understand human nature. He recognized that people are not always noble, not always loyal. And if you build your entire foundation on their affection, you may find yourself standing on sand. That's why he used the metaphor of the lion and the fox. The lion represents brute strength, force, intimidation, the capacity to dominate. The fox, on the other hand, represents intelligence, cunning, adaptability, the ability to deceive when necessary. A ruler, or any person seeking to navigate power, must know how to be both. Because strength without strategy is reckless, and strategy without strength is vulnerable. What does this mean for you and me? It means that in a world where appearances are manipulated and loyalty is often skin deep, we must cultivate both fear and love, but never confuse them. You can inspire love, but you must command respect. And that respect often comes from setting clear boundaries, from making hard decisions, from showing people without cruelty that you are not to be taken lightly. This isn't about becoming cold or unfeeling. It's about understanding the psychology of influence. People don't follow the kindest leader. They follow the strongest one who knows when to be kind. And here's the paradox. When you embody strength first, love often follows. People are drawn to those who are grounded, decisive, and unshakable. They trust those who don't bend to please everyone. But if you lead with love, if you bend too easily, apologize too often, give too much, you may gain affection, but lose authority. Eventually, people stop listening. Worse, they may begin to exploit you. That's not because they're evil. It's because humans, by nature, test boundaries. We always have. We always will. So ask yourself, in your life, in your relationships, your work, your leadership, have you been the fox? Have you been the lion? Or have you been neither? And what has that cost you? To master life, you must master perception. You must understand how people read you, fear you, love you, and respond to you. Not to manipulate them, but to protect yourself, to lead, to thrive. Because in the end, it's not about choosing love or fear. It's about learning how to use each precisely, consciously, powerfully. The final mask, how to use deception without losing your soul. Now we arrive at the hardest truth of all. Because if you followed this far, you've already wrestled with the idea that deception often wins, that morality is used as a tool, and that fear may be safer than love. But here's the final, and perhaps most dangerous question we must confront. How do we use deception without becoming deceivers? How do we walk among illusions without becoming hollow ourselves? How do we wear the mask without forgetting who we are beneath it? Machiavelli never told us to abandon our conscience. He never said, be evil. What he said was far more nuanced and far more demanding. But he said, be aware. Be aware of the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. Be aware that if you want to survive, lead, or even simply protect yourself, you must learn to navigate human behavior in all its beauty and all its brutality. And yes, that means learning to deceive when necessary. But not to feed your ego, not to manipulate for sport. It's to protect your mission, your purpose, your people, yourself. The danger lies not in deception itself. The danger lies in forgetting why you're using it. The greatest deceivers in history didn't fall because they lied, they fell because they became addicted to the lie. They stopped knowing where the mask ended and their true face began. And that's what we must guard against. Because when you deceive without self-awareness, without discipline, without anchoring yourself in something deeper, you lose your center. You become a shapeshifter with no form, a performer with no audience, a shadow with no substance. So how do you protect your soul while using deception as a tool? First, you must know your values, not the ones you post online or recite when convenient. The ones you live by when no one's watching, when it hurts, when it costs you. If you don't have those, deception will devour you. But if you do, if your values are real, tested and alive, then you can wield deception like a surgeon wields a scalpel, precisely, sparingly, and with full awareness of its consequences. Second, you must choose your moments. Not every situation calls for strategy. Sometimes, radical honesty is the most powerful move. Sometimes, vulnerability disarms more than manipulation ever could. The key is discernment, knowing when to speak plainly and when to speak carefully, when to show your cards and when to hold them close. This is not cowardice, it's wisdom. It's the dance between authenticity and strategy. And the people who master that balance are the ones who quietly shape the world. Third, you must practice internal honesty. This is the most brutal part. You must never lie to yourself. You must never justify manipulation as virtue. You must never dress up cowardice as tactical silence. You must look at your actions, every move, every word, every silence, and ask, was this true? Was it necessary? Was it aligned with who I say I am? Because if you lie internally, the mask will fuse to your face. And then no one, not even you, will remember what you once stood for. Here's the paradox. The more deeply you understand deception, the less you need to use it. You become someone who can play the game, but doesn't always have to. Someone who can bend reality, but chooses to strengthen it instead. That is power. That is integrity. That is the final mask, the one you can wear, remove, and see through all at once. So ask yourself this. Are you using deception to protect truth or to avoid it? Are you controlling the mask, or has the mask started controlling you? Because in the end, Machiavelli didn't hand us a weapon. He handed us a mirror, and the ones who dare to look into it without flinching are the few who can lead others through fire without becoming ashes themselves. If this made you rethink truth, power, and the real game of life, share it. Because the world doesn't need more blind virtue. It needs more conscious strength.